Roughly 1 out of every 3 bites of food we eat exists because of bees. Their pollination keeps crops growing, ecosystems balanced, and biodiversity alive. Without bees, much of the world as we know it would fall apart. At first glance, a beehive can seem chaotic, but if you look closer, you'll find a community moving in perfect harmony, each bee playing its part towards a shared goal, to keep the hive alive, thriving, and protected. And when they do sting, it's a self-sacrifice, a final act of defense for something greater than themselves. In that quiet, relentless effort lies a deeper truth. Real strength comes from unity. A community working together with loyalty and unwavering purpose can protect and nurture what matters most. That's the quiet genius of the hive, and a powerful reminder that some battles are fought not for oneself, but for the survival and strength of the whole. This is Watch Her Cook. Hello, everyone. I'm Cassie.
And I'm Danielle.
Welcome back to Watch Her Cook, a podcast dedicated to sharing the incredible lives of women who have taken their power back throughout history.
I'm really excited for this episode because you sent me this subject on like a post on Instagram very recently. And you're like, I need to know more about this now.
Yes, I saw this on good old Instagram, inspiring some deep dives and information. But yeah, I saw this thing about the Gulabi Gang, and it was like these women vigilante groups who are standing up against violence against women and other atrocities that happen to them. And I'm like, what is this? And it's this gang of women who will literally beat up men who hurt them.
And only because it's their last resort, which we'll get into.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of information here and a lot to discuss.
There sure is. And I don't condone violence, but, sometimes when there's no other options and no one else has come to your aid, you just have to take things into your own hands and stop the violence towards yourself.
And doing it in a pink sari to boot. They
Iconic.
look so good.
They look so good.
Well, let's get to know them.
The Gulabi Gang, which translates to the Pink Gang in Hindi, is an all-women vigilante group that originated in the Banda district of Bundelkhand. Dressed in bright pink saris and armed with bamboo sticks, the group formed to confront corruption and injustice in their villages, quickly growing into one of the world's largest grassroots movements for women's empowerment. Bundelkhand is a region in north-central India. It's a drought-prone, impoverished region known as one of the poorest and most populated regions of the world. According to a 2024 study, the region is home to 18.3 million people, 79.1% who are rural dwellers, and of over one-third who live below the poverty line.
As a country, India has long operated under the caste system, a deeply rooted social hierarchy traditionally based in Hinduism. This system divides people into rigid class groups according to birth, family background, and their expected role in society. First introduced over 2,000 years ago, the caste system was originally intended to bring order by organizing labor according to skill and duty. However, over time, it has come to define not only one's occupation, but also their social status, identity, and access to opportunity.
In many rural regions, especially in northern India and areas like Bundelkhand, caste still plays a powerful role in everyday life. People are born into their caste, remain in that caste for life, and face limitations on where they can work, worship, eat, and whom they can marry. Hindu text describes 4 primary varna, or social categories, each with specific duties. These are Brahmins, who are priests, teachers, and scholars; Kshatriyas, who are warriors and rulers; Vaishyas, who are merchants, farmers, and traders; and Shudras, who are laborers and service workers.
Beyond these 4, India's caste is far more complex. Today, some scholars consider India to be a casteocracy, with over 3,000 castes and more than 25,000 subcastes, making it one of the most intricate social hierarchies in the world. Excluded from the 4 main varna are the Dalits, historically referred to as the untouchables. According to ancient Hindu legal texts, touching a dalit was believed to cause impurity. As a result, dalits were, and in some areas still are, degraded to the most stigmatized forms of labor and treatment by society. Their jobs include disposing of dead animals and corpses, cleaning human waste, and other jobs considered polluting by upper castes.
A 2006 study, which was the year the Gulabi Gang was officially formed, something that we'll get into later, revealed the persistent discrimination Dalits faced. According to research documented across 565 villages in 11 Indian states, government schools segregated Dalit children from higher castes. Some were prevented from entering police stations, Hindu temples, and denied public health care. In the job market, they were often paid lower wages for longer hours, and some employers refused to even touch them when paying. Finally, in some villages, Dalits had no access to clean water. From 2000 to 2005, records indicate that a Dalit was attacked approximately every 18 minutes. Approximately 13 were murdered a week, and approximately 3 Dalit women were sexually assaulted every day. However, experts believe the real numbers are much higher due to underreporting, which I just thought was really devastating. I mean, those are really awful statistics to list out, that 13 people were murdered per week, that 3 women every single day were sexually assaulted. And I just wanted to ask, are you surprised to learn more about the caste system and about all of these statistics?
The statistics, honestly, were shocking, of course, but learning about just the immense number of caste classifications, 25,000 subcaste categories, it's hard to wrap your mind around and what that means for people's real experience in their lives and how they're treated. And, I was mentioning that this caste system is just so ingrained in their culture, going back 2,000 years. It's almost incomprehensible to us here as Americans living in the United States. Our country is so young compared to that big of a number. And I just think of the injustices that we're fighting that feels sometimes it's hard because it's for most of our country's history, that's how it was. And we're trying to reverse that and move forward in a new way. And that's a couple hundred years compared to 2,000 years worth of this is how it's been. So that's now the norm for this country.
It's so ingrained in their culture.
Yeah. Yep.
I thought it was really interesting, the point where this is one of the most intricate social society hierarchies in the entire world, because it totally makes sense when you outline there's 25,000 even lower class. It's just, when you think about it, I think every society has kind of a class system. It's not ranked so intricately as this is played out. But then it just to have this, like you said, be something that's 2,000 years old and so detailed in the laws and what people are allowed to do and where they're allowed to work based on their family and the village they grew up in and where they are, who they can marry. It's just, it feels very rule based and very structured. You have to live this way because you are this, and you're treated this way because you are born this.
Yeah. And I think really laying out those statistics in this way regarding violence and oppression is important, because I think when I think of class and being treated differently, in my mind, and I'm almost embarrassed to say it, but I think of the first thing that comes to mind, honestly, is in pop culture, Netflix's Bridgerton. It's there's higher society people who are treated this way, and then maybe those who are not, debutantes and doing this and that. And it's a very cushy, sugar-coated way of saying that there's separation within society and people are treated one way or another. And that's obviously a fictional thing based on a totally different culture. But that's just where my mind goes to. It doesn't go to automatically, okay, if you're in a lower caste in real life in this country, present day, right now, as we're speaking, you're susceptible to all of these things. And this is what your life looks like. So I think by outlining that, it's just really important to just lay the groundwork of this gang that we're going to get to know and love and why they were formed in the first place.
Yeah, I agree. And I think for me, when I look at this, I kind of have to measure it against our society and how we've grown up. And I look at the classes that we kind of have here, where people who are lower income, lower poverty are subjected to more violence. And you look at people who are struggling with substance abuse, and people, you look at the really rich people, and you mentioned Hollywood, Netflix. When you're looking at people in Hollywood and what they don't have the same, I mean, they can pay their way out of things. They can buy what they need. They're held to this higher like pedestal almost of, wow, so we definitely have it, but it's different. And then of course you could dive into a whole realm of race and culture within the United States and how that's been treated over time and is treated today. And
that continues to have its slew of issues.
Today, that bleeds into today.
Well, going back to India, the research we shared was recorded in 2006, despite the Indian Constitution coming into effect in 1950, which introduced protections for marginalized communities, including the Dalits. The Constitution prohibited discrimination based on caste and abolished the practice of untouchability, granting Dalits equal access to public spaces, education, and employment. However, while the Constitution laid out these fundamental rights, it did not provide specific legal actions for enforcement or penalties for violations. To bridge this gap, the Protection of Civil Rights Act of 1955 was introduced. This law made caste-based discrimination and the practice of untouchability criminal offenses, clearly outlining punishments for actions such as denying Dalits entry to temples, schools, wells, and other public facilities.
In addition, the government enacted a law that was a significant step forward as it specifically targeted crimes committed against Dalits and tribal groups due to their caste. It set out tougher punishments and required authorities to provide legal aid, protection, and rehabilitation to victims.
Finally, India's government introduced affirmative action policies that reserved a percentage of seats for Dalits in educational institutions, government jobs, and elected bodies. These measures are designed to increase opportunities and help Dalits improve their social and economic status. However, many Dalits, especially those living in rural areas, still face widespread discrimination, violence, and social stigma today. Enforcement of the laws is often weak because of biases within police and judicial systems, and victims may be afraid to report crimes due to fear of retaliation or lack of trust in authorities.
Studies and human rights organizations have documented that Dalit women are at significantly higher risk of sexual violence, particularly in rural areas, due to both gender and caste-based discrimination. A 2018 survey ranked India as the most dangerous country for women. This study has received criticism for its methodology, as critics argue that some countries in the Middle East and Central Asia offer women less rights. However, in response, one social scientist wrote, quote, "I am proud of the beauty and the ancient culture of my country, India. I am not proud of the fact that India has been named the most dangerous country in the world for women. It forces us to consider cultural forces and the implementation of the laws that impact how women are actually treated in a culture despite formal law, education, employment, or income. This is especially true for women in Bundelkhand, where grassroots organizations like the Gulabi Gang have played a vital role in challenging these deep-rooted cultural barriers."
And before we get into the gang and get to know them more, we kind of touched upon it just a couple moments ago, but why this caste system remains just such this powerful influence in day-to-day life, even after all of these laws have been passed to stop discrimination. There's there's things in place at the legal level, in theory, on paper, which is important to note, because this gang was formed, like we'll get into, because they weren't seeing that played out. It was kind of like all talk, no action as far as their experience. Like, yes, okay, these laws are in the Constitution, there's all these acts and there's repercussions allegedly, but we're not seeing them. And we are still seeing violence against women and the mistreatment of women, and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, and I think that that's really tough, right? Because you implement these laws and you're like, hey, we're recognizing that this is wrong and we are forming these laws to change it. However, you're talking to a country that has acted this way for hundreds of years. And now you have these parents who have been taught by their parents, who have been taught by their parents, and now you're teaching your children these same values. And to just take all of those out and to say, no, those are wrong, I think that that's going to be really hard for people. Not that I think that that's right or anything. This is clearly, it's horrific the way that these people are being treated. But I think that it takes time. This is so ingrained in people to just be like, hey, it's against the law now.
Yeah. And then a lot of people are like, so what?
I mean, even law enforcement's taught this.
And I think this reminds me so much of one of my favorite quotes of all time, because it can be applied to so many different things. And it's something along the lines of, I might be butchering it, but you'll get the idea. The most dangerous phrase in the English language is, but we've always done it this way. And it's just so true, because it can be applied to anything that's an issue that has been kind of perpetuated and we've just always done in a certain way. It's like almost justification to continue the behavior or the line of thinking. And it's super dangerous to not evolve and make changes and maybe move in a different direction. And that it just, like, as soon as we were going through this, I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly the problem. We've always done it this way. What's the problem?
Yeah, it's like, that's just how things are. And you really have to step back and think, okay, why are things like this? And is it right? Mm-hmm. Especially if you are in one of these higher castes or classes. I mean, this doesn't even just apply to this region of the world. We see this everywhere, but just because you are part of this higher class and you're not affected, does that make it okay? And you can just kind of turn an eye and treat other people in a way that you've been taught. So I think it takes a lot of relearning. And I think is probably why even after these laws were implemented, that people just didn't follow it because they didn't believe in these laws.
And the other part of it that we kind of just like skimmed over a little bit is not only is it thousands of years old, this way of operating, it's also tied to Hinduism. And that is just clearly everything in India. Almost everybody in India follows Hinduism, and it's such an integral part of their life. So you're seeing this disparity between groups of people that's, I don't want to say justified, but at least backed by Hinduism in some way. Like, that is also a huge key component of this that makes it all the more difficult to change.
Right. When you bring in religion into your beliefs, how do you change that so quickly?
Okay. Well, let's get to know the gang. I used to be so intimidated by cooking. Growing up, making and sharing meals wasn't a big part of my life, and I never really got the hang of it. But recently, I've been mindful about stepping up my dinner game, and that's why I'm so thrilled to be working with EveryPlate. With EveryPlate, you'll get restaurant-level deliciousness week after week with recipes like crispy buffalo ranch chicken and cheesy Mexican street corn hash. And those used to be meals I'd order out at a restaurant, but now I get to create them myself at home. You'll spend less on these flavor-packed homemade meals than you would on your normal groceries or at a restaurant. And if you were like me and found yourself making the same meals over and over again, cut it out. With EveryPlate, you can elevate your dinner game in 30 minutes or less. Their recipes are clear and easy to follow, and thanks to EveryPlate's constantly rotating weekly recipes delivered right to your door, you'll always have the best answer to what's for dinner. I love selecting my meals a couple weeks ahead of time so I know exactly what's headed my way and what I'll be whipping up each night in the kitchen. I am eating good, and you can be too, with every plate. What are you waiting for? Dig into these flavor-packed meals your household will love. New customers can enjoy this special offer of only $1.99 a meal. Go to everyplate.com/podcast and use code WatchHerCook199 to get started. Applied as discount on first box. Limited time only.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. You chose to hit play on this podcast today. Smart choice. Make another smart choice with Auto Quote Explorer to compare rates from multiple car insurance companies all at once. Try it at progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
The Gulabi Gang was founded in 2006 by Sampat Pal Devi. The documents around her birth year vary, but she was born in around 1958 into a lower caste. She was the daughter of a shepherd and had no formal education other than a brief enrollment in school, but she taught herself to read and write by eavesdropping on the boys' lessons.
By the age of 12, she was married to a 20-year-old whom she had never met. At 15, she became a mother for the first time, eventually giving birth to 5 children. Her mother-in-law refused to let her stop having children until she bore a son. According to an Indian sociologist, since girls leave their family when they get married, a daughter born in Bundelkhand is considered, quote, an avoidable burden raised for another family.
Sampat Pal had always gone against the grain. As her in-laws disapproved of her outspoken nature, she and her husband were forced to move into a small shack away from the family. However, this gave Sampat Pal more independence. She used her savings to buy a sewing machine and began teaching local girls, which quickly grew into a sewing school. Noticing her students were illiterate, she expanded the classes to include reading and writing. This initiative caught the attention of local organizers, and she was invited to a meeting on women's issues in her hometown. While there, Sampat Pal met other activists and realized she wasn't alone in wanting to fight for women's rights.
Inspired, she returned home and began organizing informal women's groups, where she spoke about education, hygiene, and work. She encouraged women to form savings collectives, helping them become more self-sufficient. As her influence grew, women from neighboring villages sought her help to host meetings and start similar groups. She traveled widely, even to Delhi, learning from other activists and spreading her message of equality.
The turning point came with an incident disturbingly typical in her village. One day, Sampat Pal saw a man relentlessly beating his wife in public. As this was the norm, the victim accepted the abuse while bystanders averted their eyes. Sampat Pal recalls watching this unfold, saying, quote, I'd seen this happen before and hadn't reacted. But this time, for some reason, I became infuriated. This time, I could do something. I could help this woman somehow. So, Sampat Pal approached the man and firmly told him to stop. He lashed out, warning her not to get involved, but she refused to back down. The man's wife stayed silent out of fear.
Determined to seek justice, Sampat Pal recruited a few women from her village, armed them with bamboo sticks called lathis, and returned to the man's home later that night. Once he opened the door, the women dragged the husband out of his house, confronted him with questions, and beat him until he swore never to lay a hand on his wife again. This was a powerful message. Not only did it teach the husband a lesson, it demonstrated the power that women could have when they worked together.
News of the interaction spread to neighboring villages, and to her surprise, Sampat Pal was met with support. As a result, she decided to create a formal band of women vigilantes. Each of the women would be required to wear a uniform, a pink sari, a strong feminine color, and to carry around a lathi. What started as 5 women has now grown into an estimated 400,000 women between the ages of 18 and 60.
I hate that women have to do this, but I love that this group formed. 400,000 women who stood up and said, no more, no one's helping us. We are gathering together and we are going to protect each other if no one else will.
I think it's so telling of like the desire, the deep desire that everyone felt or so many thousands of women felt. And everyone was just kind of waiting for somebody to make that first move, initiate that first step, and kind of create the invitation of, okay, let's do this. And I almost feel like there was maybe a collective sigh of relief almost, like, okay, yes, finally, let's go.
Yeah, enough's enough. It's time. And they needed someone who was brave enough to make that first move, and they all rallied around her. And I think also just the added touch of the pink sari, to use such a feminine color so intertwined with women, to be like, we are women and we are standing up. You know, you could do this in silence. You could hide your faces and you could not show that you're women who are standing up to men. You could do it that way, but they didn't. They said, we are loud and proud of who we are, and we're going to stand up for ourselves.
Maybe operate covertly or do things in secrecy. And they decided to do the opposite. I mean, these bright pink saris, like seeing them in photographs, and there's a documentary about them. I mean, they're highlighter pink from head to toe.
Yeah.
And
they're not pale pink. They're not like a mauve. No.
They're not a dusty pink rose. They're not blending in. They're standing out. No. And it's awesome.
Yeah. And I really like them because, one, we talked about that they were or are standing up for women in domestic abuse situations, but it's also a lot more than that, because the Gulabi Gang takes a stand against a number of issues that impact women, particularly those in lower castes. In the words of Sampat Pal, we are, quote, not a gang in the usual sense of the term. We are a gang for justice, which I love because I think people usually associate gangs with crime. It's like, we're not a gang. We're a group of women. The issues they encounter include domestic violence, child marriage and forced marriage, sexual assault, dowry harassment, and caste discrimination. They also address community injustices, such as land and resource corruption, and help poor women access government benefits like red cards, which are below poverty line cards, giving them access to subsidized grain.
When a case of domestic abuse comes to the gang, their first step is to report it to police and urge action. But when authorities fail to respond, they take matters into their own hands, using their lathis to confront abusers directly and beat them. The lathi became their weapon of choice because it was something Sampat Pal grew up with, imitating the boys who used them to herd cattle. Upon entering the gang, each member is trained on how to use one so they feel a sense of security. Sampat Pal faced charges for using force in this way, but was never convicted. She also insists that she has never advocated for violence in settling a dispute, and that using the lathis is a last resort, a small punishment for crimes that could result in death for women.
Which is such a fair point also, to be like, hey, we're not doing this because we want to. This is a last resort. No one has helped us. And just the vision of a bunch of women dressed in highlighter pink going up to a man who has abused and seriously injured a woman with their batons, their bamboo sticks, and just saying enough and handing it right back to him. Again, I don't condone violence, but when there is no other option and you can't walk up to these people, to this person who has been abusing his wife and be like, please stop. You know, that wasn't, they tried
that's
that.
Been tried.
They tried.
That's been attempted. And again, they step in when authorities fail. They report this appropriately. They give the chance for it to be settled as it was outlined, you know, in the law.
In the Constitution.
They're doing things by the book, which I think is also what is really important to keep in mind because, again, like you said, sometimes we associate the word gang with crime and, you know, kind of indiscriminate violence and kind of just acting without any provoking. And here, it's kind of the opposite. It's like we're going through all the correct channels, but enough is enough. You've pushed us too far. And this has been going on for thousands of years, and this is where it ends. And if we have to do it with our bamboo sticks and all that we have, that's what we're going to do. And also, I think it's important to note, like, it also gives them a sense of security, you know, against
They have an option.
They have an option. And, this is tough. This isn't, I don't know. It's just on one side of the coin, it's so empowering and it's kind of like, hell yes. And you just feel this immense sort of like pride almost in seeing these women stand up for what they know is right. But on the other side of the coin, it feels so disheartening that, all they have is a bamboo stick and each other because everything else and everyone else has failed them for so long. But they're making huge waves here.
They are making huge waves here. And I also think that it's important to note that they didn't just beat men when they did something wrong. They had other forms of punishment for these men. Another tactic that the gang uses is public humiliation and mass demonstrations. In 2009, after police refused to arrest a man stealing subsidized grain, despite there being evidence, the gang staged a demonstration in front of the station. When the protest grew large enough to block traffic, they brought out stray dogs, allegedly sprayed pink and wearing signs around their necks that read, "Atara Dog Police." When questioned by police, Sampat Pal called the dogs, quote, "new recruits," and elaborated by saying, quote, "It's simple. When we call you for protection, you don't come. But if we ask a dog to attack, it attacks. Dogs are more loyal than you."
I mean, there's nothing like making a statement like that because, again, it's not violent. They're not breaking a law, but they're making a huge point and one that can't really be disputed.
And dogs have always been more loyal than people anyway.
And we all know that.
A tale as old as time.
Long gone are the days of waiting to be seen in a doctor's office only to have that awkward conversation with your healthcare provider. WISP gives you access to sexual and reproductive healthcare from the comfort of your home. Get treatment for BV, yeast infections, UTIs, and much more delivered directly to your home or ready for pickup at your local pharmacy in less than 3 hours. The best part? WISP is discreet, convenient, and you don't need medical insurance to receive care or prescription medication. Visit us today at hellowisp.com.
This episode is brought to you by Polestar. There's only one true way to experience the all-electric luxury SUV Polestar 3, and that's to take a test drive. It can go from 0 to 60 in as little as 4.8 seconds with the dynamic handling of a sports car. But to truly understand how it commands the road, you need to be behind the wheel. Up to 350 miles of range, the 3D surround sound system by Bowers & Wilkins. It's all something you have to experience to believe. So book your test drive for Polestar 3 today at polestar.com.
On another occasion in 2011, the Gulabi Gang helped a 17-year-old girl who was sexually assaulted by several men, including a local politician. When the victim tried to report it, police arrested her instead, acting on false theft charges filed by her attackers. After the victim's father approached the gang for support, the gang led a public protest in front of the police station, pressuring authorities until the perpetrators were arrested. Their bold action drew national attention, even prompting Rahul Gandhi, the heir to the Gandhi family's political throne in India, to visit the victim. This act affirmed the influence the gang had.
They've also played a part in crashing forced child weddings, along with raiding homes where dowries were being extorted. Dowries are property or money a wife brings to her husband when they get married. But their activism isn't limited to confrontation. They help women navigate bureaucracy, teaching them how to file police reports, claim welfare benefits, and use legal protections. In many cases, male allies help write out complaints for illiterate members.
They advocate for education for women and have initiated self-help projects such as training programs on producing pickles and candles to help women gain financial independence. Some Gulabi Gang women have even been elected to local village councils, using reserved seats for women and marginalized castes to fight for clean water, better roads, and access to schools. By 2010, at least 21 members had one local office, bringing grassroots change from within.
Initially, many men resisted the group, unwilling to let their wives or daughters join, but the gang made a point of including them in the conversation, showing that gender injustice affects entire families and communities. Over time, men began seeking out the gang themselves for help with abused daughters or for support when facing caste-based oppression.
I mean, that is a huge indicator that this is working because, yes, it's a all women's group and you have to be a woman to officially join, but having men allies is everything. I mean, they're fighting for change across the board, and you can't do that without onboarding and getting men in line with what they're hoping for the future. And it's, I think, a big step to have fathers and husbands be like, okay, well, I need help for my loved one who's a woman. How can I assist? Or can you help me? Having men lend their support for writing and doing other things and also seeking their help that's just such a big step in the right direction.
Yeah. Men who love women and want to protect them and in a good way and fight for them they're the true MVPs.
Honestly.
Really are.
It's like, because I think it's really easy, to see a division here between women and men, women fighting against men. And while that's true, that's not the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal is for women to be treated equally as men, and to not be
hurt. I mean, this is women against violent men.
Right. I think that conversation is one that we see a lot in a different way. But even here in the U.S., with a lot of things that are happening with women fighting for rights and bodily autonomy and things like that, and, the whole, not all men type of thing, it's not women against men. It's women fighting for their safety and for their voice. And I think that seeing men join the effort is just what it's all about. That it's yes, that is this is the point. This is what we're trying to do.
You don't have to be in a community to be an ally to a community. Right. And so men step up. Another thing that I really, really love about this gang is that they help women navigate to advocate for themselves, which I thought was really incredible. And I related to it a lot because right out of college, I used to work for a domestic abuse agency. And essentially what they did was really similar to this. So part of what I was a part of was we helped women obtain lawyers and fill out different court documents that they needed to do and teach them how to do it. And I just thought that it was really, really encouraging that they're like, hey, come over here. I'm going to teach you how to advocate for yourself. I'm going to teach you how to do these things and what you need to know. And it's so much more than these women aren't just dressing in saris and beating up men, which is amazing and more power to you, but they're also teaching other women to become their own, to become stronger, to become more independent. And I just think that that's amazing.
Yeah, it's let's fight the problem, but also make some positive steps forward of how we can not be as reliant on who's oppressing us,
Yeah, we're fighting physically and we're fighting mentally.
In March of 2014, Sampat Pal was removed from her leadership position amid growing disagreements within the group. Members of the gang accused her of self-promotion, mishandling funds, and using the group's mission in favor of personal ambitions. This was following her decision to participate in the reality TV show Big Boss, which is similar to Big Brother, and after running for office without consulting the group, despite the gang's long-standing resistance to political co-option. Following her removal, Suman Singh Chauhan, the assistant commander, was appointed interim leader. Today, the Gulabi Gang has split into several factions, each led by a different woman.
Despite tensions within the gang towards the end of her leadership, Sampat Pal's influence remains undeniable. She transformed what began as a grassroots response to injustice into one of the most recognized women's movements in the world. By challenging domestic violence, caste-based discrimination, and child marriage with nothing but bamboo sticks and drive, she showed rural women, many of them illiterate and oppressed, that they could be agents of change. The Gulabi Gang has inspired books, documentaries, exhibitions, and other grassroots-led groups. Today, they continue to protect lives, challenge injustice, and remind hundreds of thousands of women that you don't need to have privilege to have power. Even though Sampat Pal ended up being kicked from the gang, she was the real. She started it all. It's here today. It's still, it feels like a story that we would be telling in the past tense, but these women are still very much happening, very much in action today. This is still a fight that's going on. Encourage people to read more up on it and learn more about it, because I think we need more Gulabi gangs? I think the entire world of women should start grabbing some bamboo sticks and pink clothes and get out there, honestly.
It's seeming to work. We're talking about it right now.
Yeah, it's working. So women unite. Let's form a worldwide Gulabi gang. This is a call to action. Well, thank you everyone for hanging out with us again this week, and thank you for tuning in to Watch Her Cook.
If you're looking to dive a little deeper into the Gulabi Gang, we've dropped some sources for you in the description. Let us know what incredible women's stories you'd like to hear next.
And a big shout out to Sick Bird Productions, who produces our podcast and helps bring these stories to life. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Watch Her Cook Podcast, leave a review, and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Just a reminder, empowered women empower the world. Now let's go cook. See you next Wednesday.
These days, I can do anything from my phone. Book a vacation, order a meal from a 5-star restaurant, buy and trade stocks. But maybe the most amazing thing I can do is make my dirty laundry disappear and then reappear perfectly washed and folded. I have Rinse to thank for that. I just schedule a pickup in the Rinse app or at rinse.com. A Rinse valet comes to get my clothes, and before I know it, they're back, crisply folded and ready to wear. They even do dry cleaning, which is returned hanging in a nice Rinse garment bag. And with Rinse, my satisfaction is guaranteed. If for any reason I'm not happy, they'll re-clean my clothes for free. Best of all, Rinse saves me tons of time each week. That's time I get to do something I love versus something I have to do. So if you want to save loads of time by not doing loads of laundry, remember, there's an app for that, Rinse. Sign up now and get $20 off your first order at rinse.com. That's RINSE.com.